Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Davis and the Drake Man. If it's bi-monthly, it's every 2 months, right?
Yeah.
Okay. A bi-monthly podcast hosted by two certified computer technicians. In this edition of the podcast, we'll be discussing the tech news from August and July 2017.
August and September 2017.
Yeah, August, not July. We already talked about that. So, Davis, long time no speak, eh?
Yeah, it's been 2 months, something like that. We are bi-monthly now, I guess.
This is a sporadically uploaded podcast hosted by two semi-professionals with not enough free time, apparently. All right, so let's jump right into it. The first tech news we didn't discuss on episode 11 of the podcast would be your tech news from August 1st through the 7th.
First up, we've got hackers breach dozens of voting machines. So, that's a big one. During a cybersecurity conference in Las Vegas, right at the end of July, like first couple days of August, a bunch of voting machines were proven to be hackable very easily. As many of our viewers know, there was a bit of a scandal with the Trump election where, 1 week we're getting hacked by Russia, they influenced the election. We're still trying to prove it, and we're still trying to disprove it, so it's a mess.
The burden of proof falls on the accuser. Certainly Russians may have hacked the election and may have wanted Donald Trump in the White House, but unless the FBI or the Democratic Party shows us irrefutable proof of that, they're just baseless accusations until that time. So, this is the United States. We believe in innocent until proven guilty. You don't have to like President Trump to stay true to that principle of innocent until proven guilty. Sure, he's of questionable character, but we don't have any proof that the Russians hacked anything, nor do we have any proof beyond a shadow of a doubt that he has colluded with them. So it's just speculation and accusation until such time as there is proof.
Yeah, and the thing with hacking and cybercrime is always attribution. With the internet, the old adage, I'm behind 7 proxies. It could have been China influencing the election. Could have been America influencing the election.
It could have been actually Davis who hacked my UPS My Choice account because he wanted to steal my keyboard. He's the only person who knew about it. I sent him a private PM on Slack, and he was like, "Oh, I gotta have that."
Yeah, your PS2 keyboard. My PC doesn't even have a PS2 cord.
You can adapt it. You need an active converter, actually. One of those passive ones wouldn't work, actually.
And I'm still quite happy with the Razer you actually half bought me with your discount. I'm quite happy with that Razer.
So, for those who aren't aware, I don't know how many keyboard enthusiasts there are in the small community we've sort of carved out here, but there is a series of mechanical switches made by IBM in the 80s and 90s called the buckling spring. They're sort of heralded as the grandfather of all modern mechanical keyboards. I found a new old stock one, so it was made in 93, but it's never been used. And I got a great deal on it, so that's coming in the mail today. I'll probably do a review on it for the site, actually. We've never done a retro style anything, really. We always talk about the latest and greatest hardware. So that'll be a nice departure from what we've done.
And if I ever get a SNES Classic, I'll be able to review some of those games. God.
You could always emulate the games.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
But not Star Fox 2.
Oh, that's right, because it never came out. Ooh.
Yeah. Not that I played the original. Man, I miss my Super Nintendo. I had so many good games for it.
Well, I'm just going to throw this out there that Sega does what Nintendo don't. And, which would you rather have? A curved black controller or a rectangular gray controller? I don't know, man.
Well, you know what? Nintendo eventually did have a curved black controller when the GameCube came around. And I guess the 64 controller was also kind of curved and came in many colors.
The 64 controller is the worst controller.
Yes.
You need 3.5 hands for that thing to make sense. I wouldn't be surprised if it was originally developed as like a two-person controller. Like, siblings are supposed to share this controller for a co-op game or something.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, like one person holds each of the edges, and then like you take turns using the Z or trigger or something. I'm not sure, but it just doesn't. It's so unergonomic. Like, I mean, I know their first controller was just a flat rectangle, but like it was so ahead of its time, they can be forgiven for that. But by the 90s, like, there was a lot more competition by that point, and Sony had beaten them to market, so they already gave them an example of like, this is what a good controller is. The PS1 controller, like, it's gone largely unchanged in 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, that stood the test of time a lot better than the N64 controller has.
I mean, the major additions to the PlayStation controller were the analog sticks. The first-gen PS1 controller didn't have them. And those analog sticks actually changed gaming pretty well. The 64 controller did have an analog stick, but that thing would cut open your hand if you ever tried to play Mario Party.
Yeah, didn't they actually offer users
there was a lawsuit.
A glove, yeah. If you were part of the class action lawsuit, they would offer you a glove to wear while playing the original Mario Party, I think it was, because those small games had you rotate the analog stick.
Yeah.
I remember trying to use the GameCube analog stick. There's like a mini game in the original Dragon Ball Z for the GameCube,
Budokai,
where you got to use the special beam cannon.
Yeah.
Oh, that destroyed my palm, dude.
Yeah.
Like I think I had my first calluses, but just from like playing the GameCube.
Oh man, that's a rite of passage. Your blisters need blisters.
I got blisters on my fingers.
Well, you've offended at least one person with that.
All right, so trying to get back on track here, kind of like a half segue. You do have one piece of gaming tech news in your August 1st or 7th piece here. You got PlayStation Vita, which I actually owned for like 2 days.
I mean, why'd you get rid of it? You just didn't like the controls. You didn't like
controls were great. The problem was the modding for it is so labor intensive. It's one of those things where like if you jailbreak an iPhone and then you update, you're so-called back in jail. Yeah. It's the same problem with the PS Vita. Is if you install an update, you lose your mod.
Mm-hmm. The Vita hack titled Henkaku actually jailbreaks the PS Vita permanently. Of course, Sony's pissed about it, but the thing is, they stopped first-party support for the Vita a while ago. Yeah, install it once and your Vita will be permanently hacked. No need to apply it after each reboot.
Moving now to August 8th through 14th. This was one that I added into your tech news, as a matter of fact. The Microsoft Surface Pro and Surface Laptop are not recommended by Consumer Reports. That was like a big deal because they announced that soon after the Surface Laptop came to market. Some people were like, oh, why is Consumer Reports being so hostile towards Microsoft? That those people were almost certainly fanboys because it's like it's Consumer Reports' job to look out for the consumer. They're not looking out for the corporations.
Yeah, I mean, it's their job to be neutral in this whole thing. I mean, this is corporate America. Opinions can be bought out.
Now, if anyone is interested in buying out my colleague's opinion, email him at davis@davisandthejakeman.com.
You're going to be the only one to email me, aren't you?
You may want to check your inbox.
All right, so
I'm seeing here in my inbox this one weird trick can stop erectile dysfunction. So that was tech news, right?
You sure that's not from a certain mutual friend of ours that stands 6'2"?
Does he have a bad attitude and named after a Catholic saint?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. That could be anyone, though.
Yep. Could even be a boat.
All right, so to get back on track here, the Consumer Reports piece from August 10th says that about 1 in 4 Microsoft computers fail within 2 years of purchase. That's pretty bad.
Hey, I mean, that's probably similar to iPhone failure rates, isn't it? I mean, there was the whole touch disease thing, and then what was it recently that iPhones were only guaranteed to last 1 year?
Yeah, I mean, they're only guaranteed to last 1 year, and that's just so because Apple is cheap and they don't want to replace your unit 3 years after the fact.
Yeah,
they want you to buy a new one. Yeah. But in practice, you can buy the aforementioned 6'2" friend owns an iPhone 5S. It's from 2013. It's a 4-year-old phone. It still works fine. I mean, and you see a lot of people around with iPhone 5S, the 5C, which came out the same year, but uses an architecture from 2012. So it's 5-year-old A6 processor, and it still works fine. So I wouldn't say iPhone failure rates are 1 in 5. I'd say it's probably like maybe 1 in 20, so 5%. That's just like off my anecdotal experience, though. Yeah. I should probably look that up, actually. iPhone failure rate.
Yeah, well, they still can't beat Microsoft's original Xbox 360 failure rate.
Oh my god, I got the red rings in high school, as a matter of fact.
What was it, 75% or so at launch?
Yeah, depending on the manufacturer date, it's well above half. All right, so supposedly, iPhones from fall 2016 have a 16% rate of failure, which I guess that's on the charging port. I mean, it's a pretty thin device. This device I have here charging is from that cycle. Yeah, and it's like obscenely thin. Like, look at it. It's the height of the port.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't make this smaller without the charging cables sticking out of both sides.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, they are kind of obsessed with thinness. But
at least an iPhone failure isn't catastrophic like the whole Note 7 fiasco.
Right, exactly. Like, you're just going to have to go to the Apple Store and pay an obscene fee to get the port fixed versus, like, the Note 7, like, you get kicked off of an airplane. So,
yeah.
Actually, this is in your tech news because it's sort of more up my alley. They renamed the title of the Apple Geniuses. You know that episode they had on South Park? Yeah. They made fun of all that?
No, that was great.
Yeah, so the technicians in the Apple Store are no longer called geniuses. They were called something else. Okay, Google. What are geniuses in the Apple Store called now? The Genius Bar itself has been overhauled, and now it's named something. How is this a year old? I just heard about this.
You're behind the times.
Okay.
Behind the Times New Roman.
Oh, that, as a font junkie, that gets under my skin so badly. How a lot of professors will make you use Times New Roman. I'm like, but Mercury exists. But Georgia exists. But Verdana exists. Any serif font that isn't Times New Roman. I'll even use a sans serif font. I'll even use Arial. I'll even use Helvetica. Just don't make me use Times New Roman. Like, it's pretty bad.
No, I would troll professors by using Arial just because I could. They have to put it in their syllabuses, but
yeah, if
it annoys them.
If they say Times New Roman or a comparable font, that does leave a lot of room for interpretation. Yeah. Here's a little life hack for you college students. Georgia is actually very wide compared to Times New Roman, so if your essays are measured based on page length and not word count, you can make each line a lot wider by using Georgia.
Yeah, I would also screw around with my font size. Like I would put it like 12.1,
12.5. Yeah.
I would mess around with it. If your essay is long enough, it'll add a page.
And if they ask for like 2-line spacing, you can do like 2.15.
Yeah. Oh, screw with the margins too. Add an extra like 1/10 of an inch, they won't notice.
MLA asks for 1/2 inch, but they're not going to stand there with a ruler. Yeah. They're just going to, if it looks close enough, they're not going to notice.
I mean, the other thing is I've had difficulties with certain professors because I tend to write very, very terse, I think the word is. I am a technical writer.
Yeah.
I just get straight to the nitty-gritty. Unlike Jake, who likes to wax poetic.
Yeah, we do have very contrasting styles there. Like, you see writing as a science, and I see it as an art.
Yeah, you love to finger paint, too.
Yeah. All right, so I finally pulled up the article here. Oh my god, this is worse. This is worse. I saw the headline when this first came out. I didn't ever bother to read the article. All right, so the Genius Bar is now called the Genius Grove. What a terrible name. They've added trees to the Apple Store, which kind of disrupts that like tech futuristic aesthetic. I mean, like in the future, like we kill all the trees, right? So
yeah, I mean, if you made the trees look like Minecraft or something, maybe I could see it, but it's not very futuristic at all.
no. But getting back to the heart of the matter here, I feel like this sort of silly rebranding of their in-store computer technicians is just like they're sullying, not sullying because there's nothing wrong with being green. I don't know. The new name is worse.
Yeah, I mean, they probably went with Grove just because it started with a G.
During the iPhone 7 keynote, they announced that they're developing the GPU, or they developed rather the GPU in-house for the first time. That was the one component in the as far as the engineering goes, because obviously the parts are mainly sourced from Sony and Samsung, but the engineering was all done in-house except for the GPU. But now they developed the GPU in-house too, and it's actually a tri-core something or other.
Yeah, I mean, overall, that's going to cut some costs.
Right. Not only on the development of the physical product, but on paying royalties.
Yeah.
Because it's just Apple is paying itself for its own
'cause-
brilliant ideas. Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, did they basically sink a company by deciding to develop something in-house?
That's happened a few times, yeah.
Yeah.
As we've seen with this announcement of the GPU in the iPhone 8 and 10, Apple is moving towards making all of the components in-house.
Yeah.
So how much longer does Sony Mobile have?
Don't know, because I think there was actually a delay on the iPhone X, the special 10th anniversary edition. There was a delay on the manufacturing because they're having a shortage of the OLED screens.
Oh yes, I read about that in this great little piece on Jake Mann's Tech News.
Yeah. Hey, I do try to read this stuff.
Well, no, I'm not saying that you didn't. I was just trying to
advertise
that one time I took over your Tech News.
Yeah, that one time I slept in.
Yeah, and anytime you see the Tech News come up on a Tuesday, that's the time I slept in. Because if I wake up at noon and it's due by 9, then F it. This segment of the podcast is brought to you by davisandjakeman.com/search/label/Davis. Now a word from our sponsor, Davis.
Hi.
Okay. If you'd like to advertise on this podcast, please contact me at davisandjakeman.com. So, did you hear about that time SoundCloud was saved by emergency funding as its CEO stepped aside?
Yeah, and you were really disappointed like 2 days before when it was announced they were closing down.
Oh, yeah. I PM'd you just because we host this podcast on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
Most people probably get it through Apple Podcasts or Google Play Music, but yeah, it's actually hosted there.
So, yay, we're still here.
They want us, dude. It's $5 a month for their pro service. It's a little steep.
At least we don't have to find new hosting.
Also,
or pay for new hosting.
Their music player requires Flash, so that alone should tell you all you need to know. Like this, it's been in the news constantly. Like I wrote about it last year or the year prior. I may have wrote about it in 2015. I don't even know when. Adobe announced end of life for Flash a long time back, and as time goes on, it just becomes more and more clear that Adobe is investing less and less R&D in Flash because it's the past and HTML is the present. And unfortunately, smartphone apps are the future. I hate to say it.
It's not widgets.
It's not widgets. Develop a widget. The cutting edge of software development is Windows Vista. Widgets. On Windows 9. So how about the self-healing displays from Motorola, Davis?
Relies on something called shape memory polymer, a material that can apparently become deformed and then recovered through thermal cycling. Basically, it superheats the plastic to like. I mean, it's not going to completely repair it. There's still going to be some kind of evidence, but it's not going to be like the scratches aren't going to be as deep. But the polymer could heat either by internal like battery and all that. It could also use a user's body heat. I mean, it is just a pen. I'm not sure whether they're actually going to use it anytime soon. There's a crazy amount of phone repairs that are just the screen. You drop it once, you have to go to everybody's favorite fruit-based vendor and pay an obscene amount just to either replace or repair the screen.
I forgot what we were talking about.
We were talking about the self-healing displays. But...
Okay, right. So that's tech news from 15th through the 21st. I don't think I said that. Okay. Here was one that caught my interest when I was looking over your tech news. The Federal Bureau of Investigation pushes private firms to cut ties with Kaspersky Labs.
So, for those that don't know, Kaspersky Lab is incorporated in Russia. So, with all the allegations of the election hacking and just our sort of cold cyber war with Russia, so the FBI is just kind of cautious. But yeah, there's been long-running suspicions among U.S. intelligence officials that Russia spy agencies are using Kaspersky as a front to gather information, spread malware, just the typical stuff. And because of the success of cyber attacks against the electric grid in Ukraine, just the FBI is really, really careful of Russia right now.
Fake news. No.
But the FBI officials pointed to multiple specific accusations of wrongdoing by Kaspersky, such as they're faking malware, they're false positives. We're the only ones that can detect this malware type of thing.
Is it because they invented it?
Yeah. But, it wasn't even really malware, I don't think, but...
Well, no, yeah, it's harmless software that's designed to create that false positive, right?
Yeah, that's why VirusTotal isn't quite as reliable. It's still a great site for that, but it's just false positives were a huge issue for antivirus firms for a couple of years, and they still kind of are. They're not really news. They're not really headline worthy anymore, but it's just it definitely undermines any trust. Yeah, because I think after these accusations, I think that the CEO of Kaspersky actually submitted the Kaspersky antivirus to them for an audit, and I'm pretty sure they didn't find anything suspicious.
Who can you really trust?
Certainly not the fake man.
No, he's a snake. He's the steak man.
Who enjoys steak? The steak man. We just cut ties with Kaspersky.
We did. You and I did.
Well, I haven't used Kaspersky. I've sold it, but I've never used it.
Well, being that I remember the Cold War, I don't trust them.
For those that don't know, Jake hates freezers.
Hate's a strong word. From Tech News 6 through the 12th, Roku files an initial public offering for $100 million.
But yeah, Roku, the company that makes the streaming devices, which I think you've used in the past, right?
Yeah, I own one for a time.
Yeah, the thing is with Roku, they have a bit of an image problem because you can download various apps to get free content like television shows and things like that. But many of those free apps were used for piracy. So because of that, they've got a bit of an image problem. But because of the safe harbor provisions, it's not really their responsibility.
It's not, and a lot of these piracy apps need to be side-loaded too. They're not available from the Roku App Store. You have to put in a code, and then it downloads the app from a third-party site.
Right.
It's kind of like how you can side load illegal apps on Android. It's not Google's fault that people are developing these apps.
Yeah.
And so they're absolved of responsibility of, trying to deal with that piracy.
Yeah. So let's see. A couple of stats. 15 million active accounts. Let's see. More than 6.7 billion hours on the Roku platform during the first half of 2017. That is a lot of streaming hours. Not necessarily YouTube levels, but still.
There's all sorts of stuff on there. For a lot of people, I think Roku does the best job of bridging the gap between traditional television. Roku is a vendor-neutral platform. They don't want to sell you a bunch of software solutions and streaming subscriptions the way Apple does or Google does. Google wants you to buy a Google box and rent movies from Google, buy their music and television and so on. Roku doesn't want to sell you that stuff. It just wants to sell you the box.
Yeah.
So like there's all sorts of weird stuff. Like you can watch live streams of church, like for old people who want to cut the cord, and folks like your grandma who can't leave the house but still want to be involved in that. Like if she had an Apple TV, she wouldn't be able to watch this Sunday service, but if she had a Roku, she could. Yeah, right. Like, I mean, for Roku, it's just a one-time thing. And like these boxes like last a long time. Like you can, like if you get a Roku One, it'll still work.
Yeah.
So
I mean, unless they're gonna go with either planned obsolescence or things that break after 6 months or something. Once they've sold you the box, you have nothing more to do with them.
I mean, I can't imagine how expensive it is to keep up that app store. Like, I can't imagine it's that costly. I mean, I'm sure it incurs an expense, but how great is that expense? I don't understand how they gotten into the hole as severely as they have. This is kind of bad for Roku in the long term, because what an IPO is they are offering members of the public to buy shares of the company, which means those buyers then get a say in what direction the company moves in. And unfortunately, it is the position of shareholders to look for short-term profit, which isn't always in the company's best interest.
We want more porn.
I mean, speak for yourself, Davis. I don't know where that came from. That's wildly inappropriate for this most professional of podcasts.
You can take it out in post if it's a problem, but
I'm joking. I mean, I'm just surprised it came from you as all. I'm usually the one that makes the X-rated jokes here. You're jacking my thunder a little bit, bro. Come on. I mean, we can't do the bad cop, good cop thing if we're both the bad cop. Okay, and that, I was going to say neatly, but that's a stretch. That, in the most sloppy of manners, leads us to Jake Mann's Tech News from September 13th through the 18th, which for those who don't know is a weekly digest of tech news curated by the editor-in-chief of the site, Jake Mann. Some good stuff.
Yeah, not weekly at all.
It's about as weekly as this podcast is monthly. Let's put it that way. Was at least moderately interested in everything on this list, so let's just get right down to it. First up is Samsung finally lets users of the Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus disable its Bixby button. Sort of the one fault with the Samsung Galaxy S8 smartphone was that it had a physical button to enable the virtual assistant Bixby, which is by most measurements inferior to Siri and the Google Now assistant. So people wanted to be able to disable, or better yet, remap that button to a more useful function, like maybe a camera shutter button, for instance, or to launch, I don't know, the web browser, anything basically, text, who cares, just not Bixby. And Samsung was actively disabling workaround apps that allowed you to remap or disable that, but they finally pushed a software update for those smartphones that allows you to not remap it, but at least turn it off. Because a lot of people were accidentally hitting it, mistaking it for the power button, and then they would launch the assistant. And it would be like, I'm sorry, I can't help you right now.
No one can help you now.
You're in Samsung world. Yeah. So, a little less user hostile. It's a shame that Samsung was even engaging in sort of arms race with those apps in the first place. If people want to, like, Samsung doesn't really sell services. Like, why does it care what people do with the smartphone after they pay for it? Their profits in selling the hardware. Like, they got you to buy the overpriced hardware. Be happy with that. Someone discovered browser-based mining malware on the Pirate Bay.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I pay for all the intellectual property I use. I and I encourage our listeners to do the same. Just looking at a graph here, and it shows like the CPU usage on this one guy's computer is going up to max only when he visits that site. So like these scripts are configured rather to mine Litecoin, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on.
Dogecoin.
I don't know.
Not even kidding.
I've been using this new cryptocurrency called D and the JM coin. It's really gonna catch on.
That's a nickel.
I mean, hey, I can pay you in D and the JM coin instead of high fives now. Yeah, so that's basically all there is to the story. There is no follow up there. The Pirate Bay runs a lot of ads, but they're very intrusive ads, and people use ad blockers. So they were looking into an alternative form of monetization. I mean, they've been under fire from various entities from the government, both of Sweden and in America. And I'm sure that's very costly to keep fighting those battles. And, you need to move the data from the servers from X to Y. You need to have mirrors of the site so that if it goes down, people have a backup. How about CC cleanup? You mentioned that in your tech news from this week, and I mentioned it in mine too.
Yep. So some may know about the CCleaner application for Windows and other systems, but it's basically a maintenance program. It deletes temp files, empties your recycle bin, clears web history. It's also got a registry cleaner in it. It was found to have infected about 700,000 computers. It seems to have been targeted at a few tech firms, Google, Cisco, some of the bigger ones. But yeah, it infected a lot of companies. Google, Microsoft, Akamai, Samsung, Sony, VMware, HTC, Linksys, D-Link, and Cisco. But I mean, the thing is, it's kind of, in this case, kind of a hack supply chain. They hacked into the site. They set up a freaking control server. They injected malware into the download. It's just, this has been becoming more common. Why hack the people when you can hack the source? If you can infect some widely downloaded program or site, just let people download it themselves.
All right, and to wrap things up, we just published your tech news from the 19th through now.
Yep. The CCleaner fiasco, we just talked about that.
You checked my news. I had first.
Yeah, but mine was more specific.
But mine was shorter. I don't know.
Actually, I think your article might have been about the same length. But yeah, for those who don't know, a couple weeks ago it was discovered that Equifax, the credit reporting agency, was hacked. Just about 1 in every 2 Americans has had their details leaked. So yeah, full profile, names, addresses, phone numbers, social security numbers, your credit history. It's crazy. And there was a bit of drama when a couple of the Equifax, their top brass sold their stock before disclosing that they were hacked. So that's a no-no. That's a no-no. Abandon ship and, go to prison. So there's that.
I don't know, man. They can't prove that. Yeah. What if they just felt like selling it?
Yep. And then making things worse, for a couple weeks, they were directing people to a phishing site. Equifax is also trying to sell is also suggesting people to use a specific identity service that they sell. So, yeah, good luck with that one.
So, that was some big news there, how that DRM got standardized by the Consortium for the World Wide Web.
Yep, and then right after that, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which I follow because, they're fighting for our rights. They were trying to protect net neutrality. That failed. They did rally a bunch of people to fight SOPA, CISPA. The newest one is CESTA or something. But it's just getting ridiculous. There's always some kind of bill trying to get passed that will, censor Americans or change the web as we know it. But this one is pretty big because now with the newest standard of HTML, which is the programming language used to code most of the web. Every time you load a web page, that's HTML right there. But the newest version, HTML5, will now have DRM baked into it, which is going to be a problem because it's just going to change how things stream on the web. If you're viewing, some video on the wrong site, if it was sourced on YouTube or it's owned by Warner Brothers or something like that, and it's on the wrong site, it's going to get locked down. It might not work. It might not play.
Yeah.
And you might get reported, fined, and sent to prison.
I mean, the DRM stuff would just be the usual steps of hiding behind a proxy.
I mean, the thing is, it's not something where you could, switch browsers or perhaps use Tor and a proxy. It's baked into the web page itself. If you load the web page,
yeah,
it's
the DRM protection is there, but the associated tracking is not. So
Right.
like you would be able to. I mean, if
Right.
you were trying to access it illegally, you would probably escape persecution or prosecution, is what I meant.
right.
By hiding behind a proxy. But yeah, you still wouldn't be able to view that content.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know how I feel about that, because on the one hand, like, if you're not paying for it, then, how wrong is it really to them demand you pay for something they're charging a fee for?
Yeah.
Like, if you don't want to pay the fee, don't pay the fee. But, yeah, I agree that it should be built on top of HTML5, not based into the standard itself.
And DRM has been proving counterproductive. I mean, there's been so many cases where, especially in video games, where legitimate users were unable to use either a game or product while the pirates could.
Yeah, it was
Sonic Mania.
I was just going to say that was in the news a lot. Folks who paid for the PC version of the game could not play it offline. They patched it, but the fact that it was ever an issue just goes to show you that DRM does more harm than good.
Yeah. And then the other thing is Denuvo, which is probably the most popular anti-piracy DRM, keeps getting broken very quickly. I mean, some game makers have elected just not to include it because, number one, it actually it can leave a performance impact on video games. You might have to turn down your graphics settings. You might get stutters. You might get frame breaking. There's been more of a trend lately where game developers are including it at launch and then patching it out later. In game development in that industry, I mean, usually most of your sales are going to be the first 2 weeks. After that, piracy is less of a concern. Anybody who is going to pay full price for the game has already paid it by 2 weeks.
They would have done so at or near launch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look at me. I'm a PC gamer. I'll gladly wait 6 months for the game to hit half price.
I think that's a wrap, honestly. That's probably the most important stuff. Like, because we had to condense 2 months into one podcast, it's probably best that we just mention the highlights.
Yeah, I mean, we've probably got an hour and a half of material you have to sift through now.
Right, yeah. Make less work for the Jake Man by shutting up.
All right, so do we want to do an outro or just end it?
Yeah, and this has been episode 12 of Davis and the Jake Man, the official podcast of davisandthejakeman.com, a website hosted by 2 certified computer technicians. Views expressed on this podcast are solely our own, and Davis and the Jake Man is not a company or legal entity of any sort. For more, visit us at davisandthejakeman.com.
But it's a clusterfuck.
I just want to point out, anytime we swear, I have to put a beep. because
I'm sorry.
we're G-rated on the Apple Podcast.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cursing, Davis.
But this whole Equifax thing has been a mess.